Flashback to summer 2024. The New York Rangers got eliminated in the third round to the eventual cup-winning Florida Panthers. They just won the President's Trophy, and they have the best goalie in the league, young talent that's on the verge of breaking into superstardom, and they were picked as favorites to win the East by a handful of media outlets. They've been knocking on the door for years now, and this group is the best mix of youth and age combined into an experienced core. They're winning the Cup in 2025. Well, fast forward to today, and it's looking like the Rangers might not even make the playoffs. So, what went wrong? Beyond having the officially second most annoying fan base in the league, the Rangers have had some legitimate reasons for criticism this season. They're now at a 14% chance of making the playoffs via The Athletic. The same model at the beginning of the season had them at a 13% chance of making the Cup finals. Their franchise pieces are all in the midst of down years. They traded away their captain and are healthy scratching their longest tenured player. But taking it one step at a time, the simplest problem to address here is that the Rangers are one of the worst 5v5 teams in the league. Considering they play about 75% of the game at 5v5, when you can't produce for 3/4 of the game, you're going to need to rely on another strength to carry you. In the past few years, that's been their elite goaltending, elite power play, and elite penalty kill. They've had problems at 5v5 for a while, dating back to 2022 when they first started contending. They made the conference finals that year before losing to Tampa, but they had the 23rd ranked expected goals percentage at 5v5. In the playoffs at 5v5, they allowed 112 more shots than they got themselves. You can have a Vezina winning goalie, and they did that season in Igor Shesterkin, but over the course of the playoffs, those extra 100 shots are going to add up and turn into goals that ultimately lose you hockey games. They've typically actually been able to counter this by playing excellent hockey on the special teams. Their 5-man power play is probably the best you can build if you don't happen to have McDavid or Draisaitl on your roster. New York has one of the best face-off guys in the league who can play bumper. Kreider is in the net front with his 6'3", 230-pound frame. Panarin is one of the best playmakers in hockey, and he has a Norris-winning quarterback defenseman in Fox behind him, and one of the best one-timers in hockey in Mika Zibanejad on the left flank. This unit ranks 11th in the NHL in chances per 60 this season, despite being 23rd in the league in actual power play percentage. So maybe they're a little unlucky, sure, but great units make their own luck, and with how poorly Zibanejad, Kreider, and Trocheck are playing this season, there isn't anything superstars Fox and Panarin can do. Mika Zibanejad, he can't score goals anymore. In 2019-20, he scored 5 goals in a single game and looked like the best center in New York since Mark Messier. Through 36 games this season, he has 6 goals total. That being said, the writing was kind of on the wall with him. In 2021, he signed an 8-year, $8.5 million extension despite having some of the worst 5v5 numbers on the team. In the analytics community, you could say his value was propped up by excellent finishing numbers. He put the puck in the net. That's the point of hockey, and he did it better than most people. The problem is when that dries up, you're paying him $8.5 million to go public skating in the middle of Madison Square Garden during a hockey game. The energy is obviously not there, and it's hurting the spirit of the team. Rangers reporter Larry Brooks is on record saying he's pretty sensitive to what people are saying about him, and ultimately he gets into his own head where he just spirals and spirals. For his sake, I hope he isn't watching this because his mental health is more important than hockey. That being said, he isn't getting into dangerous areas on the ice, and he doesn't play the body. His goal scoring is down immensely, and his poor defense, poor forechecking, and what looks like an overall lack of effort has turned him into an expensive piece of trade bait instead of a franchise center. Such a frustrating piece to have on your team when he was such a favorite for the fans so recently. Another franchise piece that turned into trade bait is Chris Kreider. He scored an average rate of 42 goals per season in the last 3 years, and most of that comes from planting himself in front of the net. This season, he's not getting elite net front chances like before. It's near the top of the list, but it isn't leading the league like he was the last few seasons. That step back in production, combined with his 1 assist in 31 games, means he's borderline useless out there when he isn't laying the body. He's 6'3", 230 pounds, and has hit as many players as 5'10", 190-pound Connor Dewar, except Connor Dewar has played half as many games and plays half as much per game. This has led to Kreider getting healthy scratched in a rivalry game against the Devils. By the way, he made Team America over guys like Tage Thompson, Cole Caulfield, and Clayton Keller. Crazy. Kreider and Zibanejad together make $15 million. They're the longest tenured players on the team, and they're supposed to be the leaders. And right now, they're not leaders. Part of that is because they traded away their captain, Jacob Trouba, earlier in December to try to change up the culture in the locker room, but Since then, they've only gotten worse. Without Trouba, they've only won twice in 10 games, and one of them was against Buffalo, which begs the question, if you beat Buffalo, does it even count? But Trouba played on the Rangers' penalty kill, which has been super strong in the last few seasons, and this year it's actually no different. They still kill penalties at the 5th best rate in the league, and that's due to their hyper-aggressive diamond strategy. They have guys like Riley Smith who are great at shutting down zone entries and love to try to get their own chance on the penalty kill. Zibanejad's actually playing as a solid threat on the penalty kill. He's leading the Rangers in shorthanded zone entries, although he only has 1 shorthanded point. He's been on the ice for 17 shorthanded shots and 2 high danger chances. Their penalty kill as a whole is super heavy on denying zone entry and is one of their main focuses. Roope Hintz is coming in on a struggling Dallas power play, but he's a super fast player, so they've kind of stepped back a bit. Despite that, Riley Smith knows when to step in and quickly limit Hintz's space along the boards. Lindgren knows to step up and clear if he has a chance. Their penalty kill works, their power play works to an extent, but not really, and their goalie is paid money. They signed him to the largest goalie contract in NHL history, like 2 months ago, and he's playing like a decent goalie right now. Goalies are really weird though. Play comes and goes and ebbs and flows, but he's still playing like one of the better goalies in the league. His counting stats don't look amazing due to how many chances New York is allowing, especially with a defensive core that has one guy with a positive net value. Historically, you can count on Igor to show up for the playoffs, and he's still playing great hockey to keep New York in games. So they're 1.5 out of 3 on their strengths this season. Their 5v5 doesn't work at all, but how are they supposed to address those 5v5 issues? Well, part of it came down to the progression of young talent, which unfortunately has not developed the way they wanted. When you think about young guys in New York entering this season, it was Alexis Lafreniere and Kaapo Kakko, who were 1st and 2nd overall picks respectively. They were meant to be the face of New York hockey when the Zibs, Kreiders, and Trubas fell off, but it just didn't happen and hasn't happened yet. Kakko is supposed to be a high-end, first-line winger with high IQ, great puck control, and great passing. Think of a poor man's Leon Draisaitl or a bigger Jonathan Huberdeau. This is an exciting prospect. He was meant to excel in situations where he had the puck and he could facilitate. On the Rangers, he never became that though. He fell into a bottom 6 role due to the lack of ice time available on that competitive lineup that New York had. He was never given proper power play time. In fact, the most power play minutes he's ever had in a game was in the 15th game of his career. He collects a puck with good instinct, cut into open ice as Tkachuk was expecting the 1T, and he sniped on Bobrovsky. He's played 13 games in his career where he's been on the ice for 65% of the power play time or more. In those 13 games, he has 7 points and 11 total points. 9 of those 13 games happened in the first 2 months of his career. He was given a chance in the first 2 months, and then they kind of stopped trying. It's a shame, but ultimately he got traded to Seattle, and it kind of put a stamp in what is one of the biggest development blunders of the last decade for New York and maybe around the entire league. Lack of meaningful ice time has also been an issue for Alexis Lafreniere, who is currently substantially better than Kakko, but he was considered the best Canadian prospect since Connor McDavid when he was taken 1st overall in 2020. He's a great passer, high IQ, he's got a decent shot. His issue has been actually taking that step into a superstar. Every year he's been growing a little bit and getting everyone super excited until this season where he's stagnated. In the playoffs last year, only 6 guys had more goals than him. That's really good. This year, after signing a 7-year, $52 million contract, he's sitting at 127th in the league in goals. The concerning question that wasn't really even considered this summer is if Lafreniere's increased production last year was just him really clicking with Artemi Panarin, New York's superstar offensive winger who hit 120 points last year compared to his 94-point pace this season. JFresh Hockey's stat from midway through last season showed that Lafreniere benefited the most from a teammate out of any player in terms of getting high danger opportunities. Playing with a guy like Panarin is a skill in and of itself, but Panarin is 33 years old now, and you've probably seen the best season of his career last year. So Laf eventually will have to carry the torch, which is why it's so concerning that this season the Laf, Zib, Panarin line, $27 million committed to the 3 of them, had an expected goals of 41.9% in their 43 minutes together. That's terrible. Like, that's so terrible. If you are below 50% on a $30 million line, that's terrible. If you're almost at 40%, that's so terrible. I can't even believe it. So do you blame Zibanejad for holding everyone down? Well, I mean, probably a little bit, but do you also hope that the 23-year-old first overall pick can start to carry his own line? Absolutely. Lafreniere's defense is such a big question mark that, like, come on, man, what the hell is this? It's an effort question sometimes, and that's a serious problem if he's going to be the face of New York going forward. Adam Fox, young as well, he's 26 years old and has Defenseman of the Year. His problem is that he's not really a superstar right now, but in my opinion, he's fine. He's just playing in a terrible hockey system. The issue goes deeper than Fox himself, and I don't think Fox is at that Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes level where he could carry a team, but in the right system, he's one of the best of the best. K'Andre Miller is another young player, only 24 years old as a defenseman who's played some huge minutes. Unfortunately, he's had a step back in performance this year, and for a sturdy second pairing defenseman to be effective, they have to be consistently fine. K'Andre Miller makes some great plays, but when he's not playing well, he just looks terrible. Giveaways, not playing the body, bad IQ plays, wrong pinches. This has all made him another piece that New York might be happy to trade. The final young guy that might be a problem is, I mean, what are we doing here? It's got to be so easy to work on your hitting. Just proper positioning. Listen to Sean Avery or something. I don't know. If you don't know Matt Rempe, he's a 6'8" enforcer who's played 22 career games and has accumulated 12 games of suspensions in that time. He's a specimen. I love him for the sport because you got to imagine this is an accident, right? If he can learn how to hit without getting suspended, then he could be one of those all-time fourth line guys in the future. For how much he fills up the headlines, though, he's not really the issue as much as he's just an issue in his own right. He's an issue for the league. I don't know. Let's not worry about it. Okay, so we know what's wrong. Their 5v5 hockey doesn't work, partly due to their defensive core, which is playing terrible hockey outside of Fox, and the future faces of the franchise aren't stepping up in a way that substitutes in for the older faces of the team. How do we fix this? It's New York, so bear with me here. They hate losing, but I don't see a situation where you can win anything this season. They're last in the division, and they need to make up 7 points, jumping 6 teams in order to make the final wildcard spot. You need to sell some guys and give the young guys the keys to the franchise. They already traded Kakko, which I'm not so sure was the right call, especially after it felt like they traded him based on vibes. But hold on to everyone else under 27, except for maybe K'Andre Miller at the right price. I haven't talked about Will Cooley at all, but he's an example of a young guy stepping into a big role in New York and finding success. I think more of that would help this team immensely. Vibes alone would be helped a lot if a young guy started clicking. Imagine Lafreniere started playing at an elite level, what that would do for the Zibanejads and Kreiders to take some heat off their back. At the deadline, start talking trade options for Zib and Kreider and Trocheck and Smith. Target to 20 to 22-year-old guys who are either in their first couple seasons in the NHL or about to break out. You don't want to go after draft picks first. Those guys are years away, and we're still trying to contend while Shesterkin is under contract and Panarin is still young enough to be elite. Some young pieces to consider could be Savoy from Edmonton. Trying a Cousins for Zibanejad swap could be interesting, but would maybe have to add to that. Maybe a Höglander from Vancouver, who's probably a lot lower in trade value than he was last season. There's options around the league here. Focus on getting a little younger and stomach the loss of this season. It's a retool, not a rebuild, but whatever you do, if you still want to contend, you have to make your mind up now because every game counts. But I don't know if that makes any sense personally. Final piece to consider is that it's probably time to cut out Peter Laviolette as head coach. He's their third coach since 2021, which no doubt isn't a great look to cut him already, but from my perspective, outside of the locker room, I think he's lost the team and he doesn't have a handle on things. Also, maybe fire the GM, but I'm kind of advising the GM on what to do, so if you're listening to me, then don't fire yourself. I'm really excited to see what happens here. This is New York hockey, and the Rangers are one of the most exciting teams in the league when they actually are clicking. But if they do decide to try to get a high pick this year, guess where the projected first overall pick was born? James Hagens, you are a New York Ranger. If you enjoyed this style of content, make sure to check out our other videos and let us know what we should do next. It's really time consuming making videos like this, so we would really appreciate if you subscribed. We started a subreddit called NHL Discussion where we're hoping people can talk more civilly and have more interesting conversations about the sport. If that's interesting to you, check it out on Reddit. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching.